You may have heard recently about things like separation, disengagement, disconnection, or the dreaded cutoff. Cutoffs are not good. They're not a great way to handle relationships. And I understand that this is a thing being talked about online and in certain circles to create distance from the toxic human being in your world or whatever. And in really sinister circumstances, certain online influencers are telling children that they should cut off from their parents. I'm going to describe why that's not healthy and it's really even not even effective. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull from the work of Murray Bowen, and we're going to talk about individuals in enmeshed relationships. So let's pretend these two circles are two people and they're linked together emotionally. And we call this enmeshment because if you think about how mesh works, the material, it pulls things together and keeps them close, right? So if you're enmeshed emotionally with another individual, what you do is you basically hand power over to their emotional reactivity or control or manipulation, such that when they feel something, you feel it too. When they provoke you, you have no choice but to react. And this is not to say that empathy is bad, because empathy truly is feeling as another person feels. But this is when we don't have any control over it, meaning we just feel it all the time, and we've handed all our power over, and as they go, so go we. So if they're super depressed and down in the dumps, I'm going to be depressed because they're depressed. That's not a really healthy state to be. If they're up and bouncy and excited, I'm going to be up and bouncy and excited too. Now that might sound good if you're, on a sports team perhaps, and you're voluntarily allowing yourself to get excited to get up for the game. Cool. But if this is governing your everyday life because you've unconsciously handed power over to another individual, that's probably not the greatest thing in the world. What we want to strive for then, down at this end of the continuum, is something called differentiation. And I'll spell it out here. Differentiation. Okay. And what differentiation is exactly how it sounds. So you're differentiating yourself from the other individual from or with whom you were enmeshed previously. Now, this does not say that you're walking away from them and never having a relationship with them again. In fact, it's quite the opposite. You want a healthy, happy relationship with somebody by differentiating yourself and knowing who you are separate and apart from them, specifically pertaining to emotional functioning. So, for example, that person that I mentioned earlier who's down and depressed in the dumps, I can validate that. I can say, hey man, I get that you're down and sad, and I get that these things happen. It totally makes sense to me. I empathize with you. I'm just not going to join you in it, right? I'm not going to join the person in their depression. I'm not going to join them in their anxiety. I'm not going to join them in their mania or hypomania or whatever craziness they're participating in their life that is unhealthy. I'm going to stand on my own 2 feet, separate and apart from this person, acknowledge where they are, probably help guide them through. In fact, that's what we want to do as clinicians, even, is we want to help guide people through their psychologically distressed states so that we can come out the other end healthy and happy. If I, as a clinician, am enmeshed with my patients, however, I don't know who I am, and from there I have no anchor point to even guide anybody. So, if somebody comes in and they're super anxious and I get super anxious, somebody comes in, they're super sad, I get super sad. Somebody with a trauma history is reliving that. I feel all that trauma history. I'm not very useful, right? So we can extrapolate this concept into personal relationships. Now, here's what happens that I think is really toxic, and I mentioned cutoffs in the beginning. This can be a cutoff where you start to travel down the road, and what you do is you say, I'm done with that person. I'm never having anything to do with them again. And you come down here, and it seems to the brain like you've differentiated yourself. You go, I'm just done. I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm not going to hang around with those people. Well, here's the problem. And an example might be a teenager who's raised in a super rigid household where things are only done a certain way, goes off to college and becomes a freshman pursuing a totally different career path than, say, her parents pursued. Maybe dad was a doctor and mom was an attorney, and the daughter wants to study art or music, something in the arts or the soft sciences, perhaps. And daughter's sick of her parents' stuff, so she goes off to college and she says, "I'm done with them. I'm cutting them off. I'm not going to have anything to do with them. They don't govern my life anymore. I'm an adult, right? Okay." So she goes off to college, and they call and check in on her a few months and say, "How's it going? It's great. I've made some friends. I joined a sorority." Dad says, "Are you still doing that music stuff?" And she says, "Yeah, Dad. And I really don't like that you keep asking me about that. I'm not going to go into medicine." Okay, well, what she's done in that moment, she's allowed emotion to reconnect her back into the enmeshed relationship. She never actually separated herself. She didn't differentiate herself. She didn't find out who she really is at her core. And so they get into an argument. Dad says, you know, that's not going to lead anywhere. That music doesn't pay. And she says, I hate science and I hate you too, and slams the phone down, right? As if we can still slam phone down. I think it's like you just smash the button to hang up. But anyway, she's back here enmeshed emotionally because Dad's provocation led her to become angry and maybe frightened or embarrassed or whatever, right? Now she's back on this track again. Thanksgiving rolls around. She comes back home. They have the same conversation. She thinks she's cut them off. She smashes her finger on the button and tells all her friends, my parents are stupid. They'll never understand me. Then she goes back home for Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever, and right back into the same loop again, having the same emotionally enmeshed engagements, okay? The way that you get down here and the way that you'll know that you're truly differentiated is when that phone call comes in about the very personal topic and you don't emotionally react. You say, you know, Dad, I appreciate your view. Science just isn't for me. I don't care to go to med school. I'm happy doing music. And, you know, one day I hope you can be happy for me also. Still holding the old school receiver, apparently. She's down here. Now it's up to Dad. If he wants to emotionally react, that's on him. But what she wants to do is control herself. She doesn't want to cut off, because what a cutoff does is it's basically like saying, I'm done with you, but I'm still emotionally connected. The way that we get emotionally mature is we travel down this continuum and acknowledge that people can have differences of opinions. They can be in different emotional states. They can be in moods. They can have mood disorders. They can have personality disorders. But we don't have to engage them in their disordered behavior. We don't have to engage them in their life. After all, it's not our life that they're living. It's theirs. So I just want to throw this up here and explain why cutting somebody off, while it may seem like it's a sterilizing way to become healthy and separate from the toxic individuals in your world, it may not actually release you from the emotional enmeshment. You may have physical separation. You may block their number. You may delete their social media accounts or whatever. But if you're still ruminating about that stuff, or you see somebody brings something up, or you're driving down the street and you have a flashback, or you have something that triggers you that goes back into this state where you're enmeshed with that person again, I would submit that you're not as separated as you think you are. You may have done a cutoff, which resulted in something called disengagement, but you're not fully healthily differentiated. I hope this was useful for you. If you like it, please share it around and subscribe to the channel. You know, as they say, smash that subscribe button, kind of like I smashed the hang up button on my phone, because I can't slam the receiver down anymore and make it ring like the old days. Have a great one.